أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the head of Tabligh, Dr. Kazim Dala. In my recent or previous visit, I just had this thought that, it is important to disseminate the teachings of Sahife Sajjadiyyah and to introduce the book Sahife Sajjadiyyah. In reality, even if you ask a person today that, do you know Sahife Sajjadiyyah? Among our community, they'll say, yes, it's the book of Imam Sajjad. And then you go further and ask that, now that you know Sahife Sajjadiyyah, tell me, how did it originate and what is the position? Is it authentic, inauthentic? What are the manuscripts? Is it something that is, the narration is from the Imam directly, or you don't have any information? Not only that, but even the profound concepts, as Maulana very beautifully explained, that the whole Sahifa is brim with Tawheed. Not only Tawheed conceptually, but Tawheed practically. That means, if I have to do any work, I have to do it with the color of Tawheed. Many a times we have this rhetoric of Tawheed, especially I'm talking of those Muslim brothers who claim to be more muwahhid than the Shias. They say that, don't do shirk. But when you look at their lifestyle, you find that it is full of shirk. Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam actually opens the doors for us to know what kind of life we have to apply. And subhanAllah, if you look at the themes of Sahifa, you will find that, there is a rhetoric among many of us. We say, whenever somebody asks you, what is Islam? You proudly say, it's a way of life. It's a way of life. But you'll find 40 or 50% of our life is dictated by the West. The way we eat, our table manners is their table manners, if you go and see. The way we interact, our way of interaction is their way of interaction. In fact, a time has come that if, for example, when you enter a place where there is ghayr mahram and you don't smile at her, I'm talking about men, she will feel bad and she'll say this is something which, that person has got some pride in him. Well, that is not the case. He's doing ihtiyat because this one is ghayr mahram and he doesn't want to get into haram even in the first levels. The first levels are very minute, but then as it goes on, it becomes worse. So the most important thing is to understand the Sahifa and know what Imam Sajjad alayhi salam tells us and the profound matters of Sahifa. So what inshallah we will do today, obviously the time is limited and there are some discussions which are very scholarly, which I don't want to get into here in this forum because it is a general forum. But inshallah, if we go to a specific forum, we will go to the details of what the Sahifa is all about. But before entering, there was a very beautiful memoir and thought that came while Maulana was speaking about how the fasaha and balagha of Sahifa Sajjadiyyah is, and that Arabs themselves are astounded. The way, this book Al-Ghadir that we have 11 volumes of Allama Amini. He was a Persian. Allama Amini was in fact not only a Persian, but the way he was talking Persian was like a Turkish. But his Arabic was so powerful that in the past, Saudi Arabians were actually wanting Al-Ghadir from Iran. Why? Not because it has proofs about Amir al-Mu'mineen being the right person as the successor of the Prophet, but rather the Arabic is so shireen and it is so sweet that they said, bring more and more, we would like to sell. People really are liking the way this person has written. Obviously, Al-Ghadir wa ma adraka mal Ghadir. We have not actually gone through Al-Ghadir, otherwise it is like entering into an ocean of light of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. It's with us, but we don't even look at it in this way. Now, this was one thing I wanted to say, that when I was going to Hajj in the beginning, I remember I had gone about 2-3 times as a muballigh to Hajj. So when you go for tabligh, at that time we didn't have this, PDFs and all these things in the computer, so you just have to take your laptop or your mobile and so on. You don't have to look at the books. I would bring so many books with me because I knew that I'm going to talk about the secrets of Hajj, I'm going to talk about the ahkam of Hajj, I'm going to talk. So perhaps about 7, 8 or 10 very thick books I would take. And I would also take Sahife Sajjadiyyah. So in one encounter, and they would be very rough with regard to the books, because they would either confiscate the books or tell us things. In one of my travels, tabligh travels, I remember, the person did not take any of my book. The only book the person took was Sahife Sajjadiyyah, which was this small, which was dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which did not talk about Sunni or Shia. Why did he only take this Sahife Sajjadiyyah? Then somebody explained to me, said, you know why he took? Because he needed it. They don't have this Sahife Sajjadiyyah. They love it. They want to read it. They have that sense of, need of such supplications. Like the way we, Dua Kumail is recited, you'll find that some of these soldiers are enjoying it while they are there, although they are monitoring our movements, but they are enjoying it. So this is what I was told, it's Sahife Sajjadiyyah. And then later on, Sheikh Safar and others came and, because they were good with the government, so they were allowed to print and publish Sahife Sajjadiyyah, but not as Sahife Sajjadiyyah, Sahifat Zainul Abidin. They did not allow a Sajjad to be put there. You can imagine. That means Sajjad is a very powerful name. They did not allow Sahife Sajjadiyyah to be printed as Sahife Sajjadiyyah. Can you imagine? But we have Sahifat Zainul Abidin printed in Saudi Arabia. I think you can even have a PDF copy if you go and search. As I was searching, I came to realize that it is available over there. So this was a very powerful occasion for me, that they did not take any of these books, but they only took Sahife Sajjadiyyah. And there are many other things to narrate, but inshallah whatever we can cover. As I said, I don't want to make it so ilmi so that it becomes boring. There are some discussions you can only talk in the university, so we'll not talk in that level, but we will do whatever we can. I have about 40 slides, as you can see. It's 1 to 40, so whatever I can cover, inshallah. And those things that I feel will take a lot of time, we'll leave it for other occasions. But what I really loved in the speech of Maulana is this, that this should not be the first occasion. It is not the person who comes, it is the thought and the madrasa, this madrasa of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, this madrasa of dua, this madrasa of knowing the subtleties of what Imam Sajjad is revealing, the themes of Sahifa, the adab, as he said, very beautiful. You can talk to Allah with your own language, it's okay. You are told, in fact, talk to Allah with your own language. But if somebody analyzes, he'll see that there are so many places you have become bi-adab when you're talking to Allah. Not that intentionally you did not want to observe the etiquette, but you didn't know how to express. And that's why the A'imma alayhimus salam would stress that when I tell you something, do it as I told you. Remember, there are some people who, when they recite Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabb in Dua Kumail, or Ya Man Ismuhu Dawa wa Dhikruhu Shifa, some of these are so beautiful and so sweet for us that we feel like reciting it now and again. But you are told, no, don't recite it now and again. The way Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam said, that's how you should say. And in fact, you are just narrating him. Not that you are reciting with his intentions, because those were very high and exalted. They were actually in their asfar, in their spiritual journeys, and they were actually seeing the realities as they were doing dua. Not like us, we are conceptualizing. Most of us, when we recite dua, we are not seeing the hereafter, we are not seeing the malaika, we are not seeing all these things as depicted by Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. Imam Sajjad sees it, visions it through his heart. So there is a difference. And that's why we are told, whenever we recite, like in Dua Kumail, there are some things which are amazing. That, oh Allah, even if I were to bear your hellfire, the hellfire that you're going to put me in, فَكَيْفَ أَصْبِرُ عَلَى فِرَاقِكَ, how can I bear your separation? Do we really mean this? We are already bearing the separation now. Sometimes the whole day it's with ghafla, we don't know what we have done, and sometimes it's with sin. Bearing separation, that what Imam Ali alayhi salam says, is beyond the ken of our imagination. And that's why we are told by great scholars of mysticism that whenever you recite these statements and you know that this is beyond you, you say, now I am representing Amirul Mu'mineen and I'm saying for him now. Not that me, I really mean it. So similarly, you will find in these supplications, there are some places where we should be very careful when we are narrating. Now very quickly, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Origins of Sahife Sajjadiyyah. Sahife Sajjadiyyah, if you go and see, originally it was a dictation. It was not something that Imam Sajjad was reciting and then people were writing or his sons were writing. No, it was a dictation. So it was a gathering whereby Imam Sajjad alayhi salam was dictating to two of his sons. One, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, and the other was Zayd ibn Ali, who is known as Zayd al-Shaheed, who actually rose during the time of Bani Abbas and when he rose, or Bani Umayyah, and he was actually executed. And then his son Yahya bin Zayd also rose and he also was executed. And Imam actually informed them that this was not the right time to rise, but they rose. Now obviously he is known as a Shaheed and he's also respected by the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, but it was a wrong stance. It's like, when somebody really feels it, like I'll give you the example that we have now, that we feel what is happening for Palestine. We really feel. Now if you are told that if you really feel, then do some action and you try to rise and you don't have enough people to rise with, and this is not the proper circumstance, then you are told intellectually and intelligently, rather Islamically, you are not told to rise at that time. You have to wait for the opportunity. And that is why we find that the Imam al-Baqir did not rise, Imam al-Sadiq did not rise, because the opportunity had not yet arisen the way it was at the time of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. That the time was there. In fact, there was a time when Imam al-Rida alayhi salam was asked that, why don't you rise? There are so many Shias and so on. And then he tried one of the Shias, and the Shia came to realize that he cannot even match one of the Shuhada of Karbala. And then Imam says, where is the likes of Habib ibn Madahir? You want me to rise? Where is the like of Habib ibn Madahir? And from the history, that they were those men, la mathila lahum. They did not have any similar and any people who were like them. They were very powerful. So these two were the main figures who got Sahife Sajjadiyyah, Zayd ibn Ali and Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam. Here is a very beautiful anecdote that is mentioned in one of the exegesis of Sahife Sajjadiyyah. It's known as Sharhi Sahife Sajjadiyyah by Ustad Sayyid Ahmad Fehri Zanjani. He says that in Vatican Library there is the Sahife Sajjadiyyah that is written by Zayd ibn Ali, because two people wrote, Imam al-Baqir and Zayd bin Ali. Zayd bin Ali's version, intact version, his original version, not photocopied, no, original version is there in Vatican Library, but no one is allowed to approach that place, even to take photo of that place. That's what they say. Now, basically the narration is as follows. It is from this person, Sayyid Ahmad Fehri, who narrates it from Ayatollah Shubayri Zanjani. Ayatollah Shubayri Zanjani is one of the great maraja. Those who have come to Qum know that he would recite the Salatul Jama'ah, all right? He would lead Salatul Jama'ah. And according to the office of Ayatollah Sistani, a close person told me that after Ayatollah Sistani, they say that he is fal a'lam. You know, usually there are some fatwas when we say that this is the fatwa, but ihtiyat wajib, it is to do this, all right? So for ihtiyat wajib, either we follow that alim or we go to somebody who is next in knowledge. According to a person who is near to Ayatollah Sistani and who is in Najaf, because I asked him who fal a'lam was, there was a fatwa that I wanted to know the answer of. I said, but I will not know unless I know who they consider fal a'lam. So they say that Ayatollah Shubayri Zanjani, the one who is in Qum. Anyway, so he narrates from a person known as Sheikh Nujumi, Sayyid Nujumi. Sayyid Nujumi had an acquaintance who was frequenting the Vatican Library, and he's the one who narrated that in the Vatican Library, Sahife Sajjadiyyah is there, the version of Zayd ibn Ali. So that would be like a very powerful thing for us, isn't it? When we want to prove the authenticity of Sahife Sajjadiyyah. Already it is ajib, as Sheikh Zishan told us, that it should not be that they are studying. They are already studying. In fact, one of the professors told me that we had to study some of the supplication of Sahife Sajjadiyyah word by word, meticulously, as I was, for example, researching on dua, and we had to also study the supplication manuals of the Christians to know how they write supplications and so on. So you find this is not something that we should be worried and say, no, they have already started, although they cannot match what the Shias have done. The Shias have a lot of works. It's only we are a bit far from what is happening there, the softwares that they have and the books that they have taken out. If we were to talk about the books and the manuals and the commentaries that are available, you would be amazed. So there is a lot in the Persian and Arabic world. But in our world, yeah, it's a bit pathetic to say that we are not trying to get in touch with Sahife Sajjadiyyah. But this is not a general thing. I know of some families, they are very particular with regard to Sahife Sajjadiyyah. I know of somebody who showed me a tone version of his Sahifa, a tone version, and said that now I want to rebind it because I always use it. And then he was saying that he had a Wahhabi friend who just had a look at this Sahifa and got so attracted that said that either you give me this or I'll photocopy and bring it to you tomorrow. And then the person did that. So you find there are people who actually are attracted. There are some families, but it should be something which should be universal. Everybody should understand this. Already in Iran there are conferences on Sahife Sajjadiyyah that are happening, but we should try to initiate here. I can tell you one of the best, or perhaps the best Jamaat from all the East Africa. I reckon it as Dar es Salaam. The activities, there is always an activity, there is always a haraka, and that's a beautiful thing. You see, sometimes you don't see dormancy here. Whenever I come, there is this mahfil, there is this that is going on, this person is coming. This shows progress, this shows intellectual activity, this shows love for religion. So don't forget this agenda of reviving a Sahife Sajjadiyyah within the community. Inshallah, this will happen, but we should make it a serious thing. When I told Dr. Kazim Dhala that I want to have this, it was a last minute decision for him, obviously. Although I'd already talked to Maulana when I had come, that I'm going to come and so on. But for him, it was only about 2 weeks. You are telling me before 2 weeks, that's unfair. And it was right. It was unfair of me to tell him at that time. But I said, let's start the ball rolling. Let's start it. And inshallah, this will continue with even better programs, with better scholars coming and giving you the reality of Sahife Sajjadiyyah. Okay. So this is as far as the Zayd's version is concerned. Now, before we go to these principles of authenticity, which I think it's a scholarly discussion, but then we'll go very fast. What about the version of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam? This is a question. Zayd's version, original version is there in the Vatican Library. What about Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam's version? Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam's version, some of the scholars have mentioned, is with the 12th Holy Imam. It is his heritage. It was inherited by every Imam, and it came to the 12th Holy Imam. So it is that version written by Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, dictated by Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. This was just for your information. Now when we look at this discussion is a bit technical, so I'm skipping this discussion. Reflection on the authenticity. When we want to authenticate a riwayah, what should we do? There are 4 things that the scholars have mentioned. One is the reliability of the narrator, meaning that it is established through the science of ilmul rijal, that all the narrators of a report are trustworthy. I'm quickly going through it. It should not be missed. The second is the reliability of the narration itself. It is possible that not all narrators are trustworthy, but the narration is widely or consecutively transmitted. So it is mutawatir. The first was such that, all the chain of narrations was sahih. All right, so you have itminan. The second was mutawatir. You have about 50,000 chains of narration in different tabaqat, in different usur, different times. That gives you itminan. You don't, because like somebody coming from Egypt narrating Sahife Sajjadiyyah, somebody coming from Kufa, somebody coming from Medina, somebody is coming from, let's say, Algeria, a North African country. All of them bring the same Sahife Sajjadiyyah. Of course, you have that contentment that, it is the Sahife Sajjadiyyah that we are after. So this is what is known as tawatur, and sometimes it is not mutawatir, it is mustafid. This is a technical term which must be discussed. Anyway, it shows the number is great, but not in every tabaqa, in every asr, all right? Now these will lead to discussions of technical discussions which I didn't want to put you into. The third is the elevation of content. A hadith might not have the first or second distinction in terms of its chain of transmission, but its content is so sublime and noble that it would be impossible for it to have been issued by any other person than the infallible Imam. So this is another important way. That is why you will find there is a very beautiful book known as Ghurarul Hikam wa Durarul Kalim. Unfortunately, it has been translated into the English language. It's available even for download. These are statements of Amirul Mu'mineen, but they don't have sanad. There's not like an Jabir, an this, an that, up to Amirul Mu'mineen. So how can you know the veracity? But subhanallah, if you look at the statements of Ghurarul Hikam wa Durarul Kalim, you'll come to realize that yes, hada min Amirul Mu'mineen. There are statements which are very powerful. For example, there's one hadith, up to now, whenever I listen to it, I'm mutahayyir, I'm perplexed. This cannot be by an ordinary person. This is a very powerful figure. He says, Kullu harakatin ya Kumail, every move that you make, anta muhtajun ila ma'rifatin. You need ma'rifah for everything. If I have to even move this computer, I should know how to move it. If I want to go to a place, I should know why and how and the other reasons, the ma'rifah for everything. If I want to even take a morsel of food, I should know how to do it. If I want to relieve myself in the washroom, I should know how to do it. كل حركة إلا وأنت محتاج إلى معرفة Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. So like that, you'll find Nahjul Balagha and other statements which are not having a sanad. It's only somebody like said that I saw this from this person who collected the sayings of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And there is no sanad. It's not mutawatir or it's not sahih. It's known as mursal. Mursal is something that just came from, an Amir al-Mu'mineen. You say, Baba, an Amir al-Mu'mineen? How can I know that this is really from Imam Ali alayhi salam? Then you say, look at the statement. Unzur ila ma qal. This again, Imam Ali alayhi salam. These are from the ghurarul riwayat. And Imam Ali alayhi salam says, see what is being said. Don't see who said it. And you will know, judge that. That's what we do actually. When we go and buy any novel or any book, when we study the book and know that the person who wrote the book was very powerful, the way he brings systematically and he has intellectual, intelligent thoughts, then we come to conclusion that yes, this is a powerful author. Not that, okay, who was he? Was he related to this? Did he go to Najaf or Qom to study? We'll not look at that. We'll look at the contents and come to that conclusion. Similarly, with regard to this, what scholars are trying to say is that the elevation of the content. When a scholar is really a scholar, for many years, like, inshallah, I'll show you how Ayatollah Burujardi and others are praising Sahife and saying how authentic it is. These people would look at the sanad properly and accurately and meticulously also, that, okay, there is one rajul here, there is one narrator which has not been clear, so we can't take this as correct, for example, because there are standards of how to narrate, all right? So this is the third thing. The fourth thing is external evidence. Sometimes a hadith may lack the previous distinctions, but external evidence confirms and strengthens it, such as conformity with the book of Allah and the famous practice of the great scholars. Like, I'll give you one example, very beautiful example, because people are trying to know or trying to question its authenticity, and that is Dua Nudba. Dua Nudba, it actually is a kind of epic conversation which is an epical conversation. If a person understands Dua Nudba, he will never miss it. It's very powerful. Now, people have tried to punch holes as far as the authenticity is concerned. But the scholars, the great scholars, have confirmed its authenticity. And not only that, but some of the fiqhi rules have been taken out from Dua al-Nutbah, for your information, from the past scholars. Here also, as I was studying the chain of narration and everything, I came to realize that some fiqhi rules pertaining to Friday prayers have been taken out from two of the du'as, dua of Friday and dua of Eid al-Fitr of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. So that person who is like one of Sahib Jawahir, if I tell Maulana Sahib Jawahir, he knows that he is one of the backbones of the fiqh that we have. Anybody who studies fiqh has to have al-Jawahir at home. Sahib Jawahir has proven some of the fatwas that he has from dua of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. And he says, al-ma'aloom annahu min al-Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. It is known that it is from Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. So here we come to realize that we have powerful background about that. Now, how many minutes up to? Okay, should we have a break just now? Okay, all right. So let's have a break. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. So we continue from where we left As I said, these are the four methods if you like to ascertain whether a narration is correct or not. Scholars, great scholars I'm talking about, inshallah we will mention some of them, they confidently say that actually this is an authentic masterpiece, and they also prove it in their own way. Now we will look at some of these great scholars. Of course, this is a technical discussion, so those who now would like to know that the different views in this regard, it's a whole subject in itself. There are two views. One view is that it is 100% authentic. It is also mutawatir, so we don't have to have any kind of shak and doubt in it. And another group of scholars say that although it is narrated profusely, that it is mustafid, but it is not mutawatir, and they try to prove in their own way. For example, and these second group also are great scholars, not that they are scholars of a very lower class, no. So but then ultimately their own statements say that the Sahifa is from Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, because they don't consider only the chain of narration to be a criterion of knowing the authenticity. No, as we mentioned, that there are four criteria there. It's not only the chain of narration. So with all these criteria at hand, they come to the conclusion that Sahife Sajjadiyyah is from Imam As-Sajjad alayhi salam. So among those who have mentioned that Sahifa Sajjadiyyah is from Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, they say that both Shia and non-Shia agree that the themes of these prayers are so high and sublime that their issuance from anyone other than an infallible Imam is impossible. One of those scholars is this scholar that you will inshallah see just now. He is known as Sahibul Jawahir, which I talked about when I told that Maulana knows how powerful is this scholar, and with regard to fiqh, whenever the fuqaha discuss their fiqhi matters, among the principal texts of fiqh is by Sahib Jawahir. He is the one who has written the commentary of Shara'i Islam of Allama Hilli, known as Jawahirul Kalam. That is why he is known as Sahib Jawahir. He says in his discussion about Friday prayers that he says that the late author Al-Jawahir, whose precision in the documentation of narration is clear to the jurisprudence, in his discussion about Friday prayers, now here there is a typo, he thinks there is something that is missing. Anyway, when he discusses about Friday prayers, he says that Friday prayers is a maqam of imama. That is why, listen to me carefully, that is why some of the scholars like Ayatollah Marashi Najafi, I heard, that he doesn't say that Friday prayer is optional. He says Friday prayer is not allowed except when the 12th Imam comes. Right? With regard to Ayatollah Khoui and Ayatollah Sistani, we have this option, for example. But with regard to some of the scholars, even Salatul Eid, for example, Salatul Eid is not allowed during the ghaiba of the 12th Imam. Only when the 12th Imam comes is when Salatul Eid will be allowed. And we consider it as mustahab because we follow Ayatollah Sistani, for example, or Ayatollah Khoui and so on. So there are differences of opinion. Obviously, these great scholars just don't create difference just like that. No, they study and they come to conclusions according to the principles of fiqh. So we should not just laugh at it and say, what is this? No, this is there according to some of the scholars. So this is one of the scholar known as the author of Al-Jawahir. The other is Ayatollah Burujardi. If you remember, once upon a time, Ayatollah Burujardi was the Marja' A'lam, the most learned among the Maraja. Obviously, at that time in Iran, Ayatollah Burujardi was there, but In Iraq, for example, Ayatollah Muhsin al-Hakim was there. So Ayatollah Burujardi is among those great giants. In addition to his position in jurisprudence, he is considered as one of the authorities in the science of Ilmul Rijal. In discussions about Friday prayer, when reaching Sahifa Sajjadiyyah, he says it is not hidden that the Sahifa being from the Imam is self-evident, and it is the Psalms of the family of Muhammad, witnessed by its style, arrangement, and the themes that manifest signs of miracle. It is miraculous when you look at the way Sahifa has been written. This is what he says. So the theme, the du'as, the way of presentation, all these actually tell us that it is from Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. Now this is not an emotional statement, because they are not allowed, they are authorities. When an authority of fiqh and religion tells you something, he just doesn't say it like that. There are times when, for example, Imam Khomeini, I'll give you one example. Imam Khomeini, in his fiqhi discussion, he says that Sahifa Sajjadiyyah, according to the sanad, is not authentic. According to the sanad only. We said there are 4 ways of ascertaining. So both Ayatollah Khoi and Ayatollah Imam Khomeini, they don't consider from the sanadi point of view that Sahifa Sajjadiyyah is correct. Yes, there are other 3 things that we mentioned. He said from that perspective, yes. And that's why Imam Khomeini praises Sahifa Sajjadiyyah and says this is a masterpiece of munajat with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the second great scholar who has mentioned this. The third is Muhsin al-Amin. He says كفى دليلا على صحة نسبتها بلاغة ألفاظها فضلا عن صحة أسانيدها وعظيم شهرتها, saying that sufficient proof of the authenticity of Sahifa, its attribution, is the eloquence of its words, let alone the authenticity of its chains and its great fame. So he also believes that the chain of Sahifa is authentic, right? And apart from that, he says that it is well known that it is from Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, because according to Allama Majlisi's father, who was known as Allama Muhammad Taqi Majlisi, as we shall come to learn, there are 56,100 chains of narration of the Sahifa Sajjadiyyah. So for that big amount of chain of narration for Sahifa Sajjadiyyah, and then you say that it cannot be accepted, that's wrong. However, this is in some of the, we can say the times, like there are epochs of narration. For example, in this epoch, who is the narrator? You say Maulana Sahib is the narrator. And then in the previous epoch, who was the narrator? You find there is another person who narrated it to Maulana Sahib, for example. So there are different epochs. So in every epoch, there must be so many narrators that you know that Sahifa Sajjadiyyah is authentic. That's what mutawatir is all about. Otherwise, it's not mutawatir. Now, with regard to, for example, Allama Muhammad Taqi Majlisi, yes, 56,100 narrations have been narrated, all right? But that doesn't mean in every asr, in every epoch. But as we said, that this is not the only criteria of judging the authenticity of the narration. Allama Majlisi is another person who, now we are talking of Allama Muhammad Baqir Majlisi, all right, who narrates from Allama Muhammad Taqi Majlisi. He says, in conclusion, there is no doubt that Sahifa Kamila is from our master Imam Sajjad, and its eloquence, rhetoric, and containing divine sciences that are impossible for anyone other than the infallible, attest to this reality. And I thank the Lord of the worlds for this very valuable bounty that He has bestowed upon us, the Shia. So you can see what Allama Muhammad Taqi Majlisi says. Allama Muhammad Baqir Majlisi narrates from Allama Muhammad Taqi Majlisi. Another scholar who has mentioned the authenticity of Sahifa Sajjadiyyah is Mir Damad. Mir Damad is the spiritual mentor or the tutor of Mullah Sadra. He says in the gospel of the Ahlul Bayt, meaning Sahife Sajjadiyyah, because one of his name is Injilu Ahlul Bayt. In the gospel of the Ahlul Bayt and the Psalms of the family of Muhammad, there are heavenly secrets, divine words and revelatory styles. This shows that it is from Sahifa. It's not from any person or any general figure who just puts all these words together and brings the supplications about. And finally, Imam Khomeini, he says in his book Adabus Salat, in the words of the pure Imams, especially in Sahifa Sajjadiyyah, that divine luminous Sahifa, divine luminous Sahifa which has descended from the heavenly mysticism of the God-knowing intellect and the luminous mind of the leader of the prostrators for the liberation of God's servants from the prison of the nature and teaching the etiquette of servitude and standing in the service of lordship, there is an interesting program. So look at the way he expresses and defines Sahife Sajjadiyyah. Sahife Sajjadiyyah is a masterpiece. It descends from an Imam who is an infallible Imam, and these are things which are very powerful for a person who wants to go through spiritual wayfaring also. Look at the way he says. He says, standing in the service of lordship, there is an interesting program. So it is about, he talks about this book as a mystical masterpiece. Okay, this is another saying of his. We will skip this because there is a lot to cover. Just want to go through the right things that, Here is where I mentioned that Allama Majlisi, according to him, there are 56,100 chain of narration. Let's skip this. Why is it known as Al-Kamila whenever we say Sahifa As-Sajjadiyyah Al-Kamila? The reason for Kamila is that there is a version which is Naqisa with the Zaydi Shias. So the Zaydi Shias who are in Yemen, they have a book known as Sahifa Sajjadiyyah, but it is not perfect. I think there are about 17 supplications. What we have is how many supplications? 54. But even us, we have problem because the original Sahifa had 75 supplications. Then in the hadith which was narrated, 11 were omitted. So he said 64 supplications I managed to give you. But when we look at the Sahifa, it's how many? 54. That means another 10 were lost. So 21 supplications have been lost from the original dictation of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. So we have two versions of Sahifa Sajjadiyyah. One is Naqisa, which the Zaydi Shias have, and one is the Kamila that we have. But even us, ours is still Naqisa in that way. Another reason they give that why Sahifa is known as Kamila is because of the Kamal and the perfection of the person who dictated the Sahifa. That is why it is known as Kamila. So itself it is a very perfect book because it's from a perfect human being coming out. That is why it is known as Kamila. So the authors mention two reasons. One, because we have an incomplete version, that's why it is known as Kamila. And second, because the author himself was Kamil, and when he wrote with Kamal, and the contents are perfect contents. That's why it is known as Kamila. Now this is the discussion, the difference between dua and hadith, which we don't want to go into detail, but it's a very interesting discussion. We'll leave it for the moment because of the time constraints. This also origins of the expressions of the Imam. So here is what I just mentioned. There were 75 originally, 11 were lost, and then another 10 were lost during the narration. Now, some of the themes of the Sahifa Sajjadiyyah, I will just here, although I have enumerated 8, but I will just introduce 2 or 3 because of the time constraints. One is that how Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam actually teaches us to introduce Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very interesting. I don't know if you have Christian friends. You may be having some Christian friends because you're working with them. And you will see a mentality that is prevalent in them. And that is the mentality of always looking at the Creator in a positive way. So they will say, God is good, God is merciful. Don't worry, even if you sin, no problem. But God is good. God will help you. They teach you that constantly, they inculcate this in their church. So they just look at the attributes of Jamal of Allah only. But we are opposite actually. You go to the mosque, you find everybody's face is down face. No one is smiling. Maybe one or two here and there. The others are not smiling. Why? Because they have that content of fear more in their hearts. Let's say if they knew Allah who is so pleasant that words are beyond expression, you think the person will have time for being sad? No. So, on the other hand, what is the problem with such a fikr that you don't have anything about Jalal of Allah in your mind? The problem is that you start committing sin, you'll start doing a lot of problems, you'll start even doing zulm to other people and saying that Allah is Arhamur Rahimin, no problem, He's going to forgive me. There are people like that who take that side, and that's why you'll find all the diseases, bad diseases and problems and all that in those who are irreligious, all these things happen. It's because they take this side. They say Allah is merciful, He knows, don't worry. Do, even if you want to do the sin once, no problem, kari le, wanda nahi. Not realizing that, no, that actually is disrespecting Allah. Just imagine your mother. You know how this relationship between child and mother is. It is intense. It is so beautiful and pure. If the mother slaps the child will go back and come back to the mother, isn't it? And embrace the mother. Where will the child go? Because he knows that the mother is very powerful, very good, very kind, very merciful. As the child grows, a time comes that there is a deep respect between the child and the mother. So there is that respect would not allow the child to say, hey, how are you? Otherwise the person will say, but like there was one student of mine, she said, "Hu to tukaru chu my mother, hu kau chu tu tamhe nathi ketu." I said, why? I said, so that she's comely with me and she's free and she. But that is wrong, because mother is different. Yes, she can be comely, she can be free, she can be very good. In fact, if you think about it, she might be 100 times more comely and free with you, but there is that kind of curtain which. Now, so Jamal and Jalal also go like that. If, for example, you think that you can talk to Allah, oh hi, Allah, I've come now. Now give me this, or give me that. That is bi-adabi, there is no adab. That is disrespect of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Imam Sajjad alayhi salam teaches us a balance of Jamal and Jalal. And that is why you'll find in the supplications of Sahife Sajjadiyyah, not only the sifat of Jamal are mentioned, but also sifat of Jalal, so that we have khawf and raja, as Maulana said nicely, that khawf is very important. If you don't have that khawf, then you will go to the brink of disaster yourself, because you don't have that. And not that Allah is now telling you, it's not like, the retribution, the way we compare, that let's say, okay, now you did not do the homework, so now you are deprived of the exam. Or because you didn't do the homework, you will get this punishment. Two things are separate. But with regard to us, no, everything is within us. So let's say we did not pray, the problems will come within us. Not that now Allah is saying, nathi namaz pairo, let me send that punishment. No, the punishment is within himself. You'll find that he himself behaves in a very weird way. He himself deprives himself of very important things. Why? Because the sin, the jaza and the amal are one. The reality of this in mysticism and in philosophy, we cover this, that al jaza nafsul amal wal amal nafsul jaza. They are not two things which are separate. So Imam Sajjad alayhi salam teaches us this very beautiful theme of how to address Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second dua, which is about introducing the Holy Prophet, let me tell you one thing, that we, in the level of the scholastic theologians, when we want to introduce the Holy Prophet, we introduce the Holy Prophet in such a, we can say, basic way, that if really you could know who the Prophet was, you would say, I have always disrespected the Prophet. The Prophet has a very high level of perfection. So how to address the Prophet? This is a very powerful dua. Who was the Prophet? How powerful was the Prophet? Spiritually, not only the way we only say, okay, he was infallible, yeah, but then he was like us, and he could make mistakes. He was not the way we think in scholastic theology. We have to know his maqam as dictated in the Quran and the authentic Sunnah, and you'll come to know that he is beyond what we conceive. So dua number 2 is for this. Dua number 3 is introducing the angels of Allah. Alright, I don't want to go through all the themes, but I just chose 8 themes, and this needs discussions in themselves. So these are just an example, a specimen of the themes that are there in Sahife Sajjadiyyah. There is one person who said something very beautiful. He was a scholar. He said that we say that Islam is a way of life, isn't it? Okay. The Sahife Sajjadiyyah, in its different supplications, gives us a program of how to cover our life. So we should try to study the Sahifa in such a way that, for example, a very beautiful dua that we never realize this. About sickness. What our etiquette while we are sick? We don't know how to behave. But Imam Sajjad tells us that sometimes sickness is a blessing. So when you are thanking Allah, you also thank Allah for that sickness because it helped you in A, B, C, D. So it's very important. We always think, because I have done some sins, or because I did this and that is why Allah is now punishing me. No, it's not punishment. It's a rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alright, so these are some of the themes that are there. Another very important subject of Sahife Sajjadiyyah is the supplementary versions of Sahife Sajjadiyyah. There are about 8 supplementary versions of Sahife Sajjadiyyah. 6 of them I have just enumerated here, and the others were printed afterwards. And finally, we had one Sahifa known as As-Sahifatul Jami'a As-Sajjadiyyah, which is now there in Qom available. Now, what is this supplementary versions? What happened is the 54 supplications that we had, scholars came and put other supplications of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam that they found into that manual, and that's how the supplementary versions came about. And that's why you'll find there is As-Sahifatu Sajjadiyyah Al-Thaniya, As-Sahifatu Sajjadiyyah Al-Thalitha, Al-Rabi'a, Al-Khamisa, and their authors, and they were printed and published. Some of them are republished recently, but this shows us that there are some of our scholars, I think their decision was not proper by putting these supplementary versions. You know why? Because if that is the case, Imam Zainul Abidin has so many other du'as, but this was a special dictation by Imam, and that's why it was known as As-Sahifa As-Sajjadiyyah. So just maintain the original version. The others are there. You have, for example, du'as of every namaz. We have dua Abu Hamza al-Thumali. Then put that also in Sahife Sajjadiyyah. That cannot be done unless you say this is a collection of the du'as of Imam Sajjad. Now what happened after that? But a good phenomenon transpired after that, and you'll find in Qom these things is available, that they produced As-Sahifatul Alawiyya, As-Sahifatul Fatimiyya, As-Sahifatul for example Sadiqiyya, Kadhimiyya, Radawiyya, all these up to As-Sahifatul Mahdiyya. So it's available now. What they did is they collected the beautiful supplications of the different Imams and they made these suhuf which are available. But then it's not like what we talk about in Sahife Sajjadiyyah, which was an intentional dictation which consisted of 75 supplications, and we have only 54 at our disposal. We may have others, but they are scattered, we don't know. So these are just, I just want to mention these. Now these are prerequisites of a comprehensive understanding of the Sahifa, that if we want to understand the Sahifa properly, what are the subjects we should learn to know the profound meanings of Sahifa Sajjadiyyah. I'm reading it very fast. If there is a question afterwards, you can ask. Disciplines of the Arabic language such as syntax, grammar, rhetoric and etymology. 2. Islamic ideology according to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. 3. Exegesis of the Quran according to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. 4. Understanding the holy traditions of the Ahlul Bayt, ilmud diraya. 5. Disciplines of hadith, ulumul hadith. 6. Logical thinking, ilmul mantiq. 7. Islamic philosophy, al-falsafa. And 8. Theoretical gnosis, al-irfanun nazari. So these are some things that a person should know if he wants to study the Sahifa Sajjadiyyah and understand the subtle meanings contained in As-Sahifa As-Sajjadiyyah. There's a very beautiful thing that Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh Amuli has mentioned. Let me not go into the details of this and reading this because the time is less, but all in all, there's something very nice he has mentioned. He says that if you want to study the book Sahifa Sajjadiyyah as a textbook, in that previous saying, actually he said that we should make it a textbook of the Hausa, of an Islamic seminary. Here he says that go through this sequence and then you reach Sahife Kamile Sajjadiyyah. First you study Miftahul Falah, then Uddatul Da'i, then Qutul Qulub, and then Iqbalul A'mal, and then the last book is Sahifa Sajjadiyyah, which is very profound. So this is the methodology he has propounded and he has presented. I don't want to go into the details. He himself is a giant in himself when it comes to, dua, and when it comes to mysticism. This has its own story. Zishan, how many minutes? 2 minutes. All right. I don't have time, but some of the scholars believe in this, that to understand the Sahifa, you have to ask Imam Zainul Abidin to explain to you the Sahifa. Because when it comes to the du'as are so sublime, so exalted, that the difference between hadith and dua is, in hadith, Imam would look at the addressee and then speak. But in dua, Imam is now talking from the depths of his heart and the heights of his intellect, because the addressee is not like a human being with a limited intellect or different levels of intellect. It's Allah, the creator of intellect. So that's why we are told that whenever we look at the du'as, we don't just think that, okay, I have understood. The peripheral meaning is what is meant. No, there are layers of meaning, as the scholars have said. Now, there are other very interesting things that I wanted to mention, but I think the time is over. Only as a concluding note, I would like to inform you that there was a part whereby I wanted to show you of how even Westerners, what have they said about Sahife Sajjadiyyah and how they have benefited and translated. Like we have Anne-Marie Schimmel, who translated Sahife Sajjadiyyah in German language, and then she was actually correcting her translated work in a hospital where her mother was bedridden, and near her mother was a Catholic who, when she came to realize that I'm doing something on the Sahifa, she got disturbed. She said, we have all these supplications and you are translating a Muslim supplication manual? She said, I didn't say anything. After my work was printed, I sent it to her. And then she wrote a letter and said that now I am only using this manual for my supplications. And she's a Christian, can you imagine? So there are so many things. Obviously I had prepared a lot, but every slide also needs some time, and the time was limited. The only thing is that it's high time we involve ourselves by putting the Sahife in or near our musalla so that we use it now and again, inshallah. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin al-ma'sumin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.